What's up, guys? It's Bleach 534. Everything But the Rain, Opus 7, Whole of Reproach. So, I was reading this chapter, and the first thing that struck me was not a lot is happening. I was on maybe like page 12, and I was like, really not a lot has happened so far. This is a little bit disappointing. And I finished the chapter, and I was like, okay. So I went through it again, and again, and eventually, over time, quite a few small details came to light, even though there wasn't a whole lot of plot progression. And then I went and read the manga stream translation when it came out, and the chapter kind of really, in the end, I quite like it. So let's start from the beginning. We get a little bit of Rangiku and Toshiro in the Soul Society. It disappointed me that Ishin is already back in the real world, because I wanted to see him interact with more people in the Soul Society, I suppose. We do get an interesting colour page at the beginning, actually. It's quite a good colour page. It's Ryuken, Masaki, and Ishin together. Something about green days, green clothes. I don't know what, it's a bit late for St. Patrick's Day. But it's interesting because it says it's the climax of this past arc. So I reckon maybe this arc will reach Opus 10 and then be over. So yeah, Ishin's already gone back to the real world. That's disappointing. But fine, he's back. We then cut over to the Ishida house, and we get to learn a little bit more about the intricacies of the whole Quincy tradition. And we get to learn quite a bit more in terms of personality of Ryuken's still unnamed mother. And she confronts Masaki because she knows that Masaki helped a Shinigami. And Ryuken immediately knows this is Katagiri's doing. Now, a big theory of mine is that either Ryuken's mother or Katagiri is the hooded stern ritter that we saw on chapter 494, who was never seen again. After this chapter, I'm less inclined to believe it's his mother and more inclined to believe it's Katagiri. Because when you think about it, Ryuken confronts Katagiri. As this is happening, Ryuken's mother is scolding Masaki, saying that, don't you have any shame? Even though we brought you into our house, you broke the well-established Quincy rules and went and helped a Shinigami. Because as Ryuken said, the Quincy's only go out and help after the Shinigami are dead. Probably so as to keep themselves still in hiding. So Ryuken's mum, she's still got this kind of firm idea of tradition, but Katagiri's interesting because I felt she clearly loves Ryuken. Yet she was willing to not throw away, but potentially jeopardise that relationship purely for the sake of blood purity, even though she herself is a Gemschmidt Quincy, which is a mixed race. So I thought that was really interesting. To me, that symbolises that Katagiri is on the cusp of fanaticism, and literally just a little push would make her a fully blown extremist, purely because she values this kind of antique tradition of blood purity in the Quincy's over everything else, even though she herself is a mixed race. So she's clearly been brought up from a very early age to value blood purity over everything else. So I can definitely see her as a stern ritter. I'm also pretty certain she's Uryu's mother, as I think myself and everyone else has speculated ever since she was first introduced. Which is interesting, because this chapter begins to really highlight Ryuken's disillusionment with the Quincy in general. His testament to being the last Quincy. At first you might think that this is because they're all dead, save for Uryu, and he doesn't really consider Uryu a Quincy as such, because he says he's got no talent and everything. But now I'm thinking maybe it's just that he abandoned them because he completely disagrees with this whole... I don't know, it seems a bit heel-face turn for him to suddenly not care about these prejudices when he was doing 2 chapters ago. But I think it's more for the sake of that he doesn't agree with how they treat Masaki based on these blood purity prejudices. So I believe this is probably the beginning of Ryuken's disillusionment with the Quincy in general. I really hope and expect we'll see the Vandenreich in this flashback at some point. And Ginjo, although that's looking less and less likely if this flashback is nearly wrapped up. So yeah, basically Ryuken's like, why did you tell Mother Katagiri? Why did you tell her? And Katagiri just says, Misaki was wounded by a hollow. I couldn't let someone who's with pure blood be tainted like that. She has to be healed by the master and the mistress. Ryuken then tries to basically cover for Misaki, but Misaki faints, and then this huge kind of hollow hole opens up, and it looks more like a disease and an infection than we've seen before. There's like veins, and this marks the shift in Ryuken's mother's character, because she suddenly becomes frail and fragile, and she's like, Ryuken, what are you doing? We have to wait for Father to get back. Father, being Soken, where the hell is he? Why is he not around? What the hell's Funtfeld that was mentioned a couple of chapters back? And, I mean, does Soken have a lot of relevance in this flashback? Is that why he's being continuously hinted to? But basically, Ryuken defies his mother's orders. Again, another step towards his disillusionment, I think, and he runs off with Misaki, probably in the hopes of finding Soken, maybe. His mum tries to kind of chase him, and we notice that she's got a wound on her leg, similar to the one that Orihime receives from Sora. So does this mean that she was tainted once and saved, and she knows the dangers, and that's why she doesn't want Ryuken being with Misaki when she's in this state? I don't really know. But Ryuken's kind of running blindly, he's blaming himself, and then suddenly this giant hollow jumps out of nowhere, only to be killed instantly by Isshin. And he's like, oh, you don't need to thank me. But then Isshin sees that he's got Misaki in his arms. And this is interesting because this is their first proper meeting, like they've never actually spoken to each other before. And Ryuken's only observed from far away. So, Ryuken's angry, he blames Isshin for Misaki getting this hollow hole wound. And Isshin doesn't really know what's going on. And Ryuken kind of seems to threaten Isshin at the end. He's like, I swear I will. And then suddenly Urahara appears. Now this is interesting, the Ryuken-Isshin interaction, because obviously they're not really friends in the present timeline, but they're kind of acquaintances. Maybe Ryuken still hasn't forgiven Isshin, and all this time Isshin's been trying to get him to forgive him. I don't really know. It's interesting. Yeah, and then Urahara arrives, and he's like, come with me. I will tell you the choice you need to make to save her life. In the initial translation, the final panel said, I will tell you the possible ways of saving her life. The manga stream translation is far more dire, far more direct. You will have to make a choice. What is this choice going to be? I'm thinking the removal of her Quincy powers, because that would then make sense for her to be killed by Gran Fisher. How would the removal of her Quincy powers save her life? Maybe they take all the Reiatsu out of her and make her a completely spiritually unaware human, which then means Isshin needs his Gigai to spend time with her in the real world. Could work. How on earth do they remove spiritual powers, though? Unless Urahara plans to use the Hogyoku, because at the moment he still doesn't know its true power. So he will wish for Misaki's life to be saved some way, but he said they need to make a choice. Interesting. Let me know in the comments below what you think the choice is, and if you think I'm right about her having to lose her powers, how is this going to work, and how is it going to affect? So, after all that, what do I give the chapter? Well, it's difficult. Like I said, at first I didn't think it was all that great. There's no real plot progression apart from Ryuken leaves the house and meets Urahara, that's it. But on the characterization front, it's nice. It's nice. We get to see a lot of Ryuken's mother, we get to see a bit more of Katagiri, we get to see Isshin and Ryuken interaction for the first time, and there's a nice colour page. So, overall, I'm going to give this chapter a 9. Yeah, 9 out of 10. I think that's fair enough. It loses a point because not a lot happens, and I'm disappointed that he's not in Soul Society anymore. Anyway, on to the speculation, the comments I received on the last video, my Bleach 533 review. I'm going to take a couple of comments from here, read them out to you guys, and then discuss the theories around them. So the first comment to be taken is by, forgive me if I mess up pronunciations, it's by Sadas74XXX, and they say, I think this flashback will go on until Misaki's death, and maybe show us who killed her in the end as a finish to this mini-arc. Thanks for your comments, Sadas. At first I would have agreed, But now that they're saying that the arc is being close to being wrapped up, admittedly that's just the editor. It could be completely wrong. But interesting. If it does go that far, I'll be very happy. Because I still think Aizen has a hand in Masaki's death. And I think Granfish is possibly an Aizen experiment. But I suppose we'll see. At the moment, I don't think it's going to reach her death. Because that would involve too much. It would have to... Well, I don't know. It could. It depends if the editor's right or not, really, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, I'd like it to go that far. Because there's so many questions to be answered. And the second comment I'm going to read out is by Barge Schleiman. Again, sorry if I butchered your pronunciation, but thank you for the comment. And he says, Mr. Tomo, I think Urahara met Masaki by chance. In the last page, when he bumped into her, he felt two different spiritual powers in her. Kubo depicted that in the middle picture of the first panel as white and black. He was shocked and surprised, as we can see in the first panel and middle panel, and then he becomes interested. Thanks for your comment, Barge, and I really didn't understand the last page of 533, not the last page, the page before, because there was really weird drawings going on. But you're right that we do see a black panel and then a white panel. Shinigami Hollow, maybe, but Masaki doesn't actually have any Shinigami in her at the moment. I definitely suspect the last panel was Urahara noticing the hollow within her, but it's a bit strange that he didn't necessarily act until a few days later, because this chapter 534 doesn't occur until a few days later. So, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Urahara definitely takes interest. I definitely think he feels the residual reaction of the hollow inside her. That's pretty much a given. As for the black panel, I think it's possibly just Kubo's way of emphasising that something strange is going on. The white panel is really weird, though. I'd even go so far as to say the white panel is badly drawn, because it's just strange. But anyway, that's it for this week's review, guys. 9 out of 10. If you want me to read out your speculative theories, leave me a comment below. What do you think? You know, just drop me some theories and I'll read them out next week. So until then, guys, I shall catch you later. See you then.